Hello, my friend. Today I will tell you another long-forgotten legend. Close your eyes and let the magic transport you to Middle-earth. Our journey begins. There are stories so old that even the stars do not remember them, and there are songs so ancient that only the wind still carries their echoes. This is one such tale. A tale whispered by the roots of the world in the quiet places where the earth dreams of what before the sun first rose over Middle-earth, before the silver lamps of the moon lit the darkened sky. There were the Two Trees of Valinor. Telperion the Elder bathed the land in a silver glow, while Laurelin the Younger shone with golden light. They were not merely trees, they were the heartbeats of an age, the lifeblood of a world untouched by time. But their light was stolen, devoured by darkness, and though the Valar kindled the sun and moon to take their place, the first light was lost, or so the world believed. In a land untouched by time, where the great forest of Fangorn stretched its limbs to the sky, an ant named Galadon stirred from his slumber. He was old even among his kind, for the ants were shepherds of trees, and they counted their years by the growth of the roots and the falling of the leaves. His bark was knotted with age, his limbs thick as ancient oaks, and his eyes, his slow, deep eyes, gleamed with the memories of a world long past. On this night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, he heard it, a voice, faint and wandering, carried on the wind. It was not the whisper of leaves, nor the murmuring of distant rivers. It was a song drifting through the forest, soft as the breath of dawn. It sang of something forgotten in shadow. Deep in roots that twine, a spark of light still sleeps divine. By Yavanna's hand in secret laid, a sapling waits where none have strayed. Galadon's great limbs creaked as he turned his head, listening. It had been long, long indeed since he had heard such a thing. The trees of Fangorn knew many songs, but this was different. This was old beyond reckoning, older than even the oldest boughs that still stood. The words stirred something within him, a memory of ages past when the world was green and the forest stretched unbroken from mountain to sea. It was said that when the two trees fell, Yavanna, the giver of fruits, wept, and in her sorrow she planted a final seed, a last remnant of their lost light. But it was only a tale, a whisper of the elder days. Or was it? Kadan's deep voice rumbled like distant thunder as he spoke to the trees around him. Do you hear it, my brothers? A song lost to time, now found again. The trees did not answer in words, for trees do not speak as elves or men do. But the wind through their branches sighed, and the rustling of their leaves was not of the night breeze alone. With slow, deliberate steps, Galadon began to walk. His roots pulled free from the earth, and the ground trembled beneath his heavy stride. He did not know where he was going, not yet, but the song called to him, pulling him forward like the river pulls a leaf upon its waters. He walked for many days through glades silver-lit by the moon, and valleys where the trees whispered secrets older than stone. He walked past the edge of Fangorn, where the forest met the great lands beyond. The world had changed much since the days when Anne roamed freely, and he had no wish to tread where men had built their cities, where stone roads cut through the land like scars. But the song did not fade, it grew stronger. One evening, as the dusk lay golden upon the hills, he came to a place where the trees no longer stood. A wide meadow stretched before him, the grass swaying like waves in a silent sea. In the distance, a river wound its way through the land, glistening in the dying light. And there, upon the crest of a small hill, he saw her, an elf maiden standing alone. She was clad in robes of deep green, and her hair, dark as the night sky, fell in long strands over her shoulders. In her hand she held a slender staff of white wood carved with the sigils of old. But it was her eyes that caught him, eyes bright as the morning stars, filled with wonder, sorrow, and a knowing far beyond her years. She turned as he approached, unafraid. "You have heard it too," she said, her voice soft yet certain. Galadon studied her, the slow thoughts of Anne turning in his mind. "A song of old," he rumbled. "A song of light lost in shadow." The elf maiden nodded. "I am Dariel, keeper of the old songs. I have searched for many years, following only whispers and dreams. The world does not remember, but the roots of the earth do. The last light of the Valar still lingers, hidden deep where few dare to tread." Galadon branches swayed as he considered her words. He had not journeyed beyond the borders of Fangorn and in many long years, but this was a path he could not turn from. "The light should not be lost," he said at last. "No," Amal agreed. "It should not." As the stars bloomed in the heavens above, elf and ant stood together upon the hill, two souls bound by fate and by song. And far away, where the world grew dark and deep, something stirred in the roots of the earth, a remnant of the elder days, a sapling waiting to wake. The stars stretched endlessly above them, cold and unblinking, their ancient lights spilling across the world in silver rivers. The sky itself seemed vast and eternal, an ocean of silent watchfulness, unbothered by the lives that passed beneath its gaze. The air was still, carrying only the whisper of unseen things, winds that had journeyed from distant lands, the soft sigh of grasses bending to the will of the night, the murmur of a river that had carved its path through the earth long before any living soul had walked these lands. And there, upon the crest of the hill, stood two figures, one vast and old as the trees themselves, the other slender and graceful as a willow bending to the wind. Baden regarded the elf before him, his golden eyes gleaming in the dim light, the weight of centuries heavy upon his mind. His thoughts were not swift, not like those of men, nor even as quick as the song-filled musings of elves, but they were deep, layered like the rings of an ancient tree, thoughts that stretched far beyond the fleeting concerns of mortals. He saw in Amariel something rare, something that stirred within him an echo of times long past, of memories buried beneath the weight of countless years. She was young by his measure, younger than even the oldest trees of Fangorn, and yet she carried a sorrow in her eyes, a quiet knowledge that spoke of long searching, of a yearning that had not found its end. She had spoken of the old songs, of a light forgotten yet lingering, a remnant of what had once been. And Galadon, those slow to move and slower to decide, felt the roots of curiosity twining through his thoughts, drawing him toward something he had long believed lost. Amariel, standing before him, studied the great ant with careful eyes, her fingers tracing idle patterns upon the carved wood of her staff. There was something in his presence that made the world feel vast, as if she stood before not a creature, but the living embodiment of time itself. She had always understood the ants to be guardians of the past, creatures of slow thought and deep memory. But now, faced with one in the quiet hush of the evening, she realized she had never truly understood the depth of what that meant. The ant before her had seen lands change, had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, had stood in silent watch as the world shifted around him, unmoving as the tides of history swelled and receded. For a long while neither spoke. The wind moved through the grasses at their feet, whispering between them, carrying with it the scent of far-off pines and the damp earth of riverbanks. The land was wide and quiet, the sky vast and unknowable, and for a moment they were simply two beings standing beneath the heavens, caught in the fragile stillness of time. At last, Garden's voice rumbled through the night, deep and slow, each word shaped with the patience of ages. "You say you have searched," he said, his tone neither questioning nor doubting, but carrying the weight of contemplation. "That you have wandered far, chasing the echoes of old songs. Songs are but ripples upon the great river of time, carried far but fading always. And yet you follow them still." His great limbs shifted slightly, the creaking of his bark as ancient as the whisper of roots pressing deep into the earth. "Tell me, elf child, why do you chase what is lost? Why do you search for a light that is faded into memory?" Well's fingers tightened slightly upon her staff, and she cast her gaze toward the horizon, where the last embers of twilight still lingered, painting the sky in hues of deep violet and pale gold. "Because memory is not enough," she said, her voice soft, yet carrying an undertone of quiet resolve. "Because the past, though buried, is not gone. And because some things, though thought lost, still breathe in the quiet places of the world." She turned her gaze back to him, her dark eyes reflecting the starlight like twin mirrors of the night sky. "I have read the oldest scrolls, traced the paths of those who lived in days beyond reckoning. The elves still sing of the two trees, though we have never seen them. We speak of the light of Valinor, though it no longer touches this world. We remember, and yet remembering is not enough. There is sorrow in memory, Galadon, a sorrow that deepens with time, for the more we remember, the more we feel what has been lost." She let out a slow breath, as if exhale failing the weight of years upon years of searching. "I have heard whispers, not only in books, but in the wind, in the rivers that carry their secrets through the bones of the earth. There is something yet lingering, a spark that has not been extinguished, though the world believes it so. And if there is even the faintest chance that the light remains, should it not be sought? Could it not be found?" Galadon was silent for a long moment. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, their cold light indifferent to the hopes of those beneath them. He was not quick to answer, for ants did not speak hastily, nor did they lend their thoughts to fleeting whims. His kind had seen the folly of rushing forward, had learned over endless years the weight of patience, and yet something stirred within him, a memory so distant it had almost faded, a time when the world had not yet been scarred by war and grief, when light had shone undimmed, and the voices of the Valar had still been heard in the gentle hum of the wind. "The light of the trees was not meant to fade," he said at last, his voice heavy with thought. "It was the gift of Yavanna, the lifeblood of a world unspoiled. And yet it was stolen, devoured by darkness. And now the world moves beneath the light of lesser things. But you speak of a remnant, a spark hidden in the deep places, in the forgotten roots of the world." He turned his gaze upon her, his ancient eyes gleaming with something unreadable. If this is true, if such a thing still lingers, then it is not only for the elves to seek. It is not only for those who remember. The light of the trees belonged to all the world, to every leaf and stone, to every creature that walked beneath their glow. He let out a sound that might have been a sigh, or perhaps only the shifting of wind through his great branches. And yet, what is lost is seldom found again. Time does not give back what it has taken. Abdel stepped closer, the soft fabric of her robes rustling against the grass. "Perhaps not," she said gently. "But if time does not return what is lost, then perhaps it is up to us to seek it, to reach back through the veil of memory and bring into light what should never have been forgotten." For a moment Galadon said nothing, only stood in silent contemplation, his great form a silhouette against the endless sky. And then, slowly, like the bending of an ancient bow, he nodded. "The song calls," he murmured, "and I will follow." Amariel's expression did not change, and yet something in her eyes brightened, as if a flame, long kept in embers, had begun to glow once more. She did not thank him, for this was not a debt nor a favor granted, but something greater, a path taken together, a journey that now stretched before them, uncertain and vast. The wind stirred around them, carrying the scent of distant lands, the hush of unseen things moving beyond the edge of sight. And far away, beyond the reach of their voices, beneath roots tangled deep within the bones of the world, something waited, something that had not yet forgotten the light. The night deepened, stretching its dark mantle across the vast expanse of Middle-earth. And yet time itself seemed to slow in the stillness between the ancient ant and the wandering elf maiden. The air was thick with the scent of the earth, damp soil and crushed grass, the lingering perfume of unseen blossoms drifting through the cool breeze, mingling with the faint aroma of pine carried from forests far beyond the horizon. The wind, once restless, now moved in slow, deliberate sighs, as though it too were listening, as though it too was caught in the quiet gravity of the moment. And above them the stars, those distant sentinels of forgotten ages, pulsed with a cold and watchful light, their shimmering constellations forming silent echoes of the past, unchanging and eternal. Galadon stood in quiet contemplation, his great limbs still, his golden eyes half-led, as though he were sifting through the deep and endless river of his memories, wandering through the tangled paths of thought that stretched across the breadth of ages. He had seen the world change, had felt the slow retreat of forests beneath the hands of men, had witnessed the silent passing of time where once there had been only stillness, only the slow, steady heartbeat of the earth. And yet, even he could not recall the last time he had chosen to step beyond the safety of Fangorn's embrace, beyond the shadowed glades and whispering boughs of his ancient home. He had always believed that the world beyond the trees no longer belonged to him, that the great rolling fields of men and the crumbling remnants of elven kingdoms were not his to tread. But now, standing before this elf, before Amariel, who spoke of things thought lost, of light buried deep in the forgotten places of the world, he felt something stir within him, something like the slow unfurling of a leaf long held in winter's grasp. He turned his gaze toward her, watching the way the wind moved through her dark hair, the way her eyes, bright as captured starlight, reflected something both sorrowful and unyielding, something ancient and aching. There was a weight in her expression, not unlike the weight he carried in his own great limbs. And though she was young by his measure, he saw in her the same quiet weariness, the same deep yearning that had settled within his own heart. She was a seeker, a wanderer of the unseen paths, one who could not rest in the comfort of fading memory, but instead reached for something more, something beyond the distant veil of what had been lost. And perhaps it was that, more than anything, that called to him, that quiet refusal to simply let time carry the past away. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them vast and unbroken, filled only by the hushed voice of the wind. And then, at last, Amariel let out a slow breath, the sound barely more than a whisper against the night. "There is a sorrow in forgetting," she said, her voice slow though steady, shaped by thought rather than impulse, each word carefully woven with meaning. "It creeps upon the world like a slow tide, unseen at first, gentle in its coming. We tell ourselves that remembering is enough, that to sing the old songs, to keep the stories alive, is enough to hold back the dark. But memory is not light, it is not warm. It is only the echo of what once was, only the shadow of a flame long since extinguished. And shadows, no matter how beloved, cannot keep the night at bay." Her fingers curled lightly around the staff she held, her gaze distant, unfocused, as though she were seeing something far beyond the grasslands that stretched before them. "The elves still sing of Valinor, of the trees whose light once bathed the world in gold and silver. But even among my people there are few who still believe in more than remembrance. The world grows dim, Galadon, not only in the lands of men, but in the hearts of all who dwell within it. And though I have walked the paths of old, though I have listened to the wind in its endless song, I have yet to find another who searches, who still believes that there may yet be something more than the past." She lifted her gaze to his, searching, waiting. "But you heard the song. You felt it. That means something." Badin remained motionless for a long moment, the wind stirring the branches that crowned his great form, the quiet groan of ancient wood like the slow breathing of the earth itself. And when he finally spoke, his voice was a deep and resonant thing, carrying the weight of ages, shaped not by haste but by the steady patience of one who had seen the rise and fall of empires, who had watched forests grow from saplings into towering giants only to wither beneath the long fingers of time. "There was once a time," he rumbled, "when I did not count the days by the falling of leaves, a time when I did not stand in one place, rooted in quiet watchfulness. There was a time when my kin roamed the great forests, when the voices of the trees were many and strong, when the world was vast and green and filled with the songs of things yet to be. I have seen the slow retreat of the woods, the quiet death of groves once teeming with life. I have watched as the lands of men stretched further and further, their roads cutting deep into the bones of the earth, their stone towers rising where trees once stood. And I have remained. I have watched, I have waited." His golden eyes narrowed slightly, the lines of his great face unreadable, carved deep as the roots of mountains. "But you speak of something I have not seen. You speak of something that should not be, and yet—" He tilted his head slightly, the movement slow, deliberate. "The song calls to me still." Amariel's breath caught slightly, though she did not speak, only watched him, her expression unreadable. "There is danger in seeking what was lost," Galadon continued, his voice a low murmur, almost as if he were speaking to the wind itself. The world does not give back what it has taken without cost, and time does not turn for the will of those who walk upon its path. The light of the trees was meant for all the world, and yet it was taken, devoured, buried in the dark places of the earth. If it still lingers, it does so not in the open, not beneath the warmth of the sun, but in shadow. And where there is shadow, his great limbs shifted slightly, his deep voice darkened. There is always something waiting. Amariel did not look away. "Yes," she said softly. "I know." The wind stirred again, colder now, a whispering breath against the skin, an unseen thing curling through the grass like a hidden tide. In the distance, beyond the reach of their voices, the land stretched vast and empty, but there was something there, something unseen, something waiting. And as the night deepened, the first step of their journey had already begun. Galadon, the eldest of Fangorn, the watcher of trees, the keeper of long and heavy memories, had made his choice. The past was no longer enough. The time had come to seek what had been forgotten. The night stretched onward, deep and endless, unfurling across the heavens like an ancient tapestry woven with silver threads, each star a distant ember of forgotten ages. The air was thick with the weight of silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of something unseen, an unspoken expectancy woven into the fabric of the wind, as though the land itself knew that something had stirred after long slumber. The sky, vast and immeasurable, arched above them like the great dome of a forgotten hall, its blackness limed with the faint glow of stars that seemed to watch, distant and unmoved, as though they too were waiting to see which road these two travelers would take. Galadon's great limbs remained motionless, though a slow, ponderous thought unfurled within him, stretching its roots deep into the tangled web of memory. He had spent centuries watching the slow ebb of the world's breath, had stood in the still places where time pulled like quiet waters, unhurried and patient, where the roots of old trees whispered to one another in voices too slow for most ears to hear. He had listened to the lament of forests that had faded into memory, had felt the echoes of things long past seep into the earth like rain into thirsty soil. And now, standing here where the grasses swayed like an ocean beneath the touch of the wind, he felt for the first time in countless years the stirring of something not unlike restlessness, as though a branch grown still in winter's deep slumber had suddenly felt the warmth of the coming sun and remembered what it was to move. And Amariel, her slender form wrapped in the soft twilight of starlight and shadow, stood before him, her gaze unwavering, dark as the deep places of the sea, luminous as the light caught upon its crest. There was something in the way she held herself, something poised between sorrow and defiance, as though she carried within her the weight of knowing too much, of having walked the long roads where all others had turned away. She did not move like one who followed simple curiosity, nor did she speak like one whose heart was untroubled. There was an urgency in her presence, quiet but insistent, like the first whisper of leaves before a storm. The wind shifted, a long breath drawn through the waiting grasses, rustling the hem of her robes as she looked toward the horizon, where the land met the sky in a line both sharp and infinite. "When I was young," she began, her voice low, carrying the soft cadence of something more than mere words, something shaped by memory, "I believed that the world was woven of songs, that every river and stone, every wind that stirred the leaves, was part of a great and endless melody. The stars had their voices, and the mountains too, and in the stillness of twilight, when the sky was caught between day and night, I could almost hear it, faint, distant, but there. I thought it would never fade, that it was too vast, too eternal to be forgotten. She exhaled softly, though whether from sorrow or reflection, Galadon could not yet tell. "But I learned," she continued, "that songs do not simply end. They are lost slowly, imperceptibly. They unravel, fading not in great silences, but in small forgettings. A name unsung, a story unspoken, a whisper of something once known, but now nameless. The world does not remember in great tragedy, Galadon. It forgets in small moments, in tiny, unnoticed absences, until one day there is nothing left at all." Gathon did not answer at once. His thoughts, heavy and deep, moved slowly through the vastness of time, drawing upon the long years in which he had watched and waited, upon the memories that lived within him like the rings of an ancient tree. "I have seen it," he said at last, his voice like the low groaning of earth beneath the weight of ancient roots. "I have seen the trees grow silent where once they sang. I have seen the rivers run dry where once they carried the voices of the sky. I have watched the long years pass, and I have learned that time does not steal with haste. It takes in stillness. It moves like ivy upon a ruin, creeping, climbing, until the stone is no longer seen at all." He tilted his great head slightly, his golden eyes gleaming beneath the starlight. "And yet," he rumbled, "you search still. You walk the paths long abandoned, chasing echoes of something the world has already given up. Why?" His voice was not unkind, nor was it dismissive, but heavy with the weight of an ancient question, the kind that had no single answer, the kind that had lingered in the hearts of those who still dared to remember. Amariel turned her gaze to him, the depth of it fathomless, her voice quiet but unwavering. "Because," she said, "if I do not, then who will?" Galadon considered this, the slow wind rustling the limbs upon his limbs, a breath of something unseen moving between them. He had known many who had watched, many who had mourned, many who had sung their songs in quiet lament for the things that had faded beyond reach. But few, so very few, had ever sought to reach beyond the shroud of time itself to find, rather than only to grieve. The stars overhead burned bright and cold, their light cast across the endless sky, indifferent and unchanging. And yet, somewhere beyond the reach of sight, beyond the veil of all things lost, there was something waiting, something not yet gone. "Where does the song lead?" he asked at last, the deep rumble of his voice stirring the air between them. Amariel did not answer immediately. Instead, she lifted her face toward the wind, as though listening for something just beyond the edges of hearing. When she spoke, her voice was distant, as though caught between the past and the present, between certainty and longing. "North," she murmured, and though the word was simple, it carried with it the weight of the unknown, of roads yet walked, of questions yet unanswered. "To the roots of the world, to the places where no footsteps linger, where only silence has kept watch. If the light still lingers, it is there, in the depths where time has forgotten to pass." Galadon turned his gaze toward the northern horizon, where the sky stretched vast and unknowable, where the land fell away into the endless dark of distant places. He did not yet know what lay ahead, nor did he know what awaited them in the shadows of time's great forgetting. But for the first time in many long years, he felt the weight of stillness shift, felt the quiet stirring of something not unlike the first breath of spring through a frozen wood. The past was not yet done speaking, and so, beneath the watchful stars, beneath the hush of wind and whispering grass, they took their first steps forward into the unknown, into the long-forgotten song that still hummed beneath the bones of the world. The land stretched vast before them, unbroken and ancient, its undulating plains and scattered thickets bathed in the cold silver light of the watching stars. The earth beneath their feet felt quiet, hushed in a way that suggested it had not known the footsteps of travelers for many long years, as though it had lain in patient slumber, undisturbed by the movements of men or elves, untouched even by the whispering feet of beasts that once roamed freely under the sky. The grasses swayed in slow, rhythmic waves, their tips catching the pale glow of night, gleaming like the surface of a dark sea frozen in time. There was a silence here, not empty, not void, but full, weighted with something unseen, something unspoken, as if the very air carried the lingering presence of stories too old to be remembered, of voices too quiet to be heard. Galadon's heavy steps pressed deep into the soil, the slow creak of his limbs blending with the murmur of the wind, his great form moving like a shadow through the moonlit expanse. His thoughts, long and ponderous, stirred within him like roots stretching deep beneath the surface of the earth, seeking water, seeking understanding. He had always known stillness, had always dwelt within the embrace of Fangorn, where the world moved to the slow rhythm of the trees, where the passing of years was marked not by the fleeting concerns of men, nor by the swift songs of the elves, but by the quiet falling of leaves, by the patient deepening of roots. And yet now he moved, and as he moved, he felt the unfamiliar shift of purpose settling upon him, a sense of something stirring in the marrow of his being, something he had not felt in a long, long time, an urgency that did not belong to the ways of the Ents. Amariel walked beside him, her form a slender shadow against the night, her steps light, though not without weight. She did not walk as one who wandered aimlessly, nor as one who sought only for the sake of seeking, but as one who carried something within her, something fragile yet unyielding, something that had grown within the quiet places of her heart, taking root in sorrow, in memory, in the unspoken longing for a world that no longer was. She had spent too many years searching, too many years chasing the whispers of things lost, too many years following the traces of a light she had never seen but had always known to be real. And now, as she walked beneath the watchful sky, beneath the gaze of the endless stars, she felt it again, that quiet, aching certainty that she was drawing closer, that the path she had chosen was not one of folly, but one of necessity. The silence between them stretched long, but it was not empty. It was a silence filled with thought, with meaning, with a slow unraveling of understanding that required no words, only the quiet presence of another who listened without the need for speech. And yet, at last, it was Galadon who spoke, his deep voice like the low murmur of the earth shifting beneath the weight of time. "You say that memory is not enough," he rumbled, the words slow, deliberate, each one shaped by the vast expanse of his long thought. "That remembrance alone cannot hold back the dark, that songs sung in mourning cannot bring back the light. And yet, elf child, we are made of memory, are we not? We are the sum of what has been, of all that has come before. To be a keeper of what was, to hold within oneself the echoes of things lost. Is that not enough? Is it not better to remember than to chase after shadows that may no longer be? His great limbs swayed slightly as he moved, the leaves that crowned him rustling softly as though echoing his words. The past does not yield easily, nor does time give back what it has taken. If the light is gone, should it not remain gone? What is the worth in seeking something the world has already chosen to forgive yet? Amariel did not answer at once. Instead, she lifted her face toward the wind, feeling the cool breath of the night against her skin, feeling the way the air carried with it the distant sense of unseen forests, of rivers that had carved their paths long before she was born, of things older than her understanding, older than her grief. She let the silence settle between them again, let it stretch, let it grow full with thought, with meaning, before she turned her gaze to him, dark eyes gleaming with a reflection of the stars. "We are made of memory," she said softly, "but we are also made of longing. To remember is not the same as to live. We do not walk through this world as ghosts, nor as echoes of what has been. We walk as those who still feel, who still hope, who still dream of what may yet be. And if there is a chance, even the smallest chance, that something remains, that the light of the trees, though dimmed, has not been fully extinguished, then is it not worth seeking? Even if the world has forgotten, does that mean it should be left in the dark? Should we not instead reach for it, hold on to it, protect what little may still be?" She let out a slow breath, closing her eyes for a moment before continuing, her voice quieter now, though no less certain. "I have seen what forgetting does. I have seen how the world grows smaller, how the great halls of the elves grow emptier, how the songs grow quieter, how the stars seem colder with each passing age. We say we remember, but our remembering grows fainter with time. And I cannot stand idle and watch as all that was beautiful fades into nothing more than distant stories, nothing more than a flicker of something that once was. If there is even the faintest ember left, I will find it. And if there is none, then at least I will know that it was not for lack of searching." Galadon's gaze remained upon her, unreadable golden eyes reflecting the faint glow of the moon, his great form casting long shadows across the open land. He did not speak for a long while, and when he did, his voice was quieter, though no less resonant. "You carry the weight of sorrow," he said at last, "but also the weight of hope. They are heavy burdens, elf child, heavier than stone, heavier than the weight of years. They do not lessen with time, they only grow." Amariel smiled faintly, though there was no mirth in it, only the quiet understanding of one who had already borne that weight for far too long. "I know," she murmured, "and yet I will carry them still." The wind stirred once more, cool against the skin, rustling the grasses, whispering through the air like the quiet breath of something unseen, something waiting. The night deepened around them, stretching vast and silent, and in the distance, far beyond the edge of sight, the land rolled into the dark toward the north, toward the places where no light had shone for many long years. And they walked toward it, not in haste nor in fear, but in quiet certainty. For though the past did not yield easily, and though the world had forgotten, there were still those who remembered, and there were still those who searched. The night deepened around them, pressing down like the weight of an ancient sky, a dome of shadowed expanse speckled with the cold, unfeeling fire of 1,000 distant stars. Their light was pale and silent, their distant glow carrying the echoes of forgotten worlds, places unseen and unreachable, lands that had burned and faded long before even the first voices of Middle-earth had sung their songs. In their watchful glow, the land stretched vast and unbroken, a great and endless sea of shifting grasses and rolling hills, dark as ink beneath the hush of night. The wind moved in long, slow breaths, sighing through the fields like a weary thing, whispering through the hollows and rising over the ridges in a voice too ancient to be deciphered, yet too sorrowful to be ignored. There was an emptiness here, a silence that carried not only the weight of solitude, but the heaviness of something forgotten, something lost beneath the layers of time, buried in the quiet where no living thing had walked in long years. Gathon moved through the darkness with the slow, measured steps of one who had known patience beyond reckoning, each footfall pressing deep into the waiting earth, each step a whisper in the great, endless rhythm of the world's turning. His thoughts, vast and slow, unfurled like roots searching blindly through the deep soil of memory, winding through the corridors of time, brushing against echoes of voices long stilled, of forests that had stood before the lands of men were even shaped. He had never left Fangorn for more than a wandering's breath, never strayed from the whispering shade of its great trees. For what reason had he to go where the roots of his kin did not reach? And yet here he was, in the open lands where no great branches stretched to the sky, where the world was too wide, too bare, too exposed. He had not thought to leave his home again, but the song had called to him, and now as he moved beneath the gaze of the cold stars, he wondered if the song had called him towards something more than a memory, towards something yet to be found. Beside him, Amariel walked in quiet thought, her steps light but unhurried, her slender form moving like a shadow upon the wind, wrapped in the silver glow of the night, her dark hair shifting with each breath of the unseen breeze. There was a stillness to her, not the stillness of quiet repose, but the stillness of one who carried too much within them, of one whose mind wandered the roads of thought, even as their feet walked the earth. Her gaze, though forward, was distant, as though she looked not only at the path ahead, but at something far beyond it, something unseen, something that had not yet come to pass. And yet, for all the weight of her thoughts, she did not falter. She moved with purpose, with certainty, though it was not the certainty of knowing where the road would end, but the certainty that it must be walked nonetheless. The silence between them stretched long, filled only by the murmuring hush of the world's breath, by the rustle of unseen creatures stirring in the grasses, by the distant sigh of the river, its unseen waters moving like silver veins through the darkness. And then, at last, it was Amariel who spoke, her voice soft but carrying within it the weight of something that had long sought words. "I once thought," she began, her tone thoughtful, measured, her gaze remaining upon the horizon as she spoke, "that to seek was enough, that if I walked far enough, if I listened long enough, if I searched with all that I had, I would find what I sought, that the world would yield its secrets to those who were willing to seek them. But I have learned that the world is not kind to seekers, nor is it generous to those who ask for what it has buried. It does not return what it has taken simply because we desire it. Time does not unmake itself for the sake of those who walk its roads." She paused, drawing a slow breath as if tasting the weight of her own words before continuing. "And yet, despite all that, Despite the years I have spent following nothing but whispers, despite the silence that answers more often than not, I cannot turn away. I cannot let myself be still. It is not only the light that I seek, Galadon, not only the remnant of what was. I seek the truth of what it means to remember, of what it means to hold on to something that the world has chosen to forget. I seek to know if what is lost is truly beyond reach, or if it only waits for those who are willing to reach further. Maiden let her words settle in the hush between them, his great limbs shifting slightly as the wind moved through the leaves upon his shoulders, carrying the scent of the earth, of unseen waters, of the distant echo of trees he could no longer see. His thoughts moved slowly, deeply, winding through the vast corridors of memory, through the echoes of old songs, through the weight of years spent in the quiet watchfulness of the unchanging woods. "It is a heavy thing," he said at last, his voice deep, slow, resonant with the weight of time, "to carry such longing, to walk with it, to let it shape your steps, to let it call you beyond the roads of your own making. I have seen longing in many things, Amariel. I have seen it in the trees that reach ever upward, seeking the sun though they will never touch it. I have seen it in the rivers that carve their paths through stone, ever moving, never resting, always seeking the sea though they know not what waits at the end of their journey. I have seen it in the mountains that rise against the sky, unyielding, unbroken, but longing still for the days when the world was young, when they too were new and unshaped by time." He paused, his golden eyes shifting toward her, unreadable in their depth. "And now I see it in you. But tell me, elf child, do you know what it is you truly seek? Is it the light itself, the remnant of the trees? Or is it something else, something within yourself, something that the finding of the light would only serve to reveal?" Umilio hesitated, her steps slowing for the briefest moment, her breath catching in a way so faint it might have gone unnoticed by any other. Her gaze turned away, not in avoidance but in thought, in the quiet searching of her own heart. And for the first time she did not have an answer. The wind stirred again, cold against the skin, carrying the scent of distant things, the hush of unseen places, the whisper of something waiting beyond the veil of sight. The stars, ever watchful, burned with quiet indifference, and the land stretched onward into the unknown. And still they walked, not in haste nor in fear, but in the slow, unyielding rhythm of those who seek not only what is lost, but the meaning of loss itself. The night stretched long, a seamless veil of shadow draped over the vast expanse of Middle-earth, and yet it did not feel empty. There was a weight to the silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of something unseen, something older than the hills that rose in the far distance, older than the rivers that had carved their winding paths through the bones of the land. It was a silence that carried the echoes of forgotten things, of voices long stilled, of memories pressed deep into the soil like the roots of trees that had never been named. The stars above burned cold and distant, scattered across the sky like fragments of something broken, a shattered remnant of a time when light had not been a thing stolen, when the glow of the two trees had still bathed the world in gold and silver. And beneath them, beneath that vast and indifferent sky, two figures moved through the darkness, one towering, ancient as the oldest groves, the other slender, silent, a shadow of thought wrapped in the pale shimmer of the moon's reflection. The air was cool, touched with the distant breath of unseen waters. the damp scent of earth and growing things mingling with the crisp sharpness of the wind that carried whispers from far places. The land was changing beneath their feet. The soft, rolling meadows of the south had begun to fade into something wilder, something untouched, where the trees did not grow in neat gatherings, but sprawled in tangled, unshaped masses, their limbs twisting toward the sky in silent longing. These were the old woods, the forgotten woods, where the echoes of Yavanna's first song still lingered in the deepest roots, where the earth held on to secrets even the wise had long ceased to seek. Maiden felt it, the slow hum beneath the surface, the pulse of life that had not yet been smothered by the passage of years. The quiet voices of the trees, not speaking in words, not in any way that elves or men could hear, but in the deep language of growing things, in the sigh of leaves, in the stretching of roots beneath the surface of the world. It was fainter than he remembered, like a song sung from a great distance, a melody half remembered, and yet it was there, and it was enough to stir something in him, something he had long believed had gone dormant, a feeling that had not touched his heart since the days when the great forests of Arda had still been whole. Beside him, Amariel moved in quiet contemplation, her steps deliberate though unhurried, her gaze lost somewhere beyond the horizon, as though she saw not what lay before her, but something else, something not yet spoken into being. There was an absence in her expression, a distance in her eyes, not of disinterest, nor of weariness, but of one whose thoughts moved in deeper places, whose mind stretched beyond the present, weaving itself into things unseen, into the echoes of what might yet be. She had not answered his question, not truly, and yet he had not pressed her. He understood silence, understood the weight of unspoken things, understood the way some thoughts needed time to shape themselves into words, and so he waited. At last, when the wind had shifted, when the scent of damp stone and hidden roots had begun to creep into the air, when the trees around them had grown taller, their branches stretching high, their bark dark with the memory of ages past, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it did not waver, carrying the weight of something long held, something shaped by years of wondering. "I do not know," she admitted, her words slow, thoughtful, as though she were speaking not only to him, but to herself. "I do not know if I seek the light itself, or only what it means to me. I have followed this path for so long, chasing only whispers, only the faintest traces of something I have never seen. And I have told myself that it is the light I seek, that it is the last remnant of the trees that calls me forward. But sometimes I wonder if it is not the light itself, but what the light represents. If it is not the thing that was lost, but the fear of losing more." She let out a slow breath, her fingers tightening around the staff she carried, though her steps did not falter. "The world grows dimmer, Galadon. It is not only the light of the trees that is faded. It is the light in the hearts of those who once held it dear. The elves depart, the great halls stand empty, the songs grow quieter with each passing age. I seek the last ember of something that should never have been extinguished, because I do not know how to live in a world where there is no one left to remember it." Galadon listened, the slow turning of his thoughts moving like deep roots pressing into the ancient soil. He had known many voices over the long years of his wandering, had heard the songs of elves and the laughter of men, had listened to the quiet sorrow of trees that had stood too long without their kin. But this was something else. This was not the voice of one who only mourns the past, nor of one who merely longed for what was lost. This was the voice of one who could not let go, of one who carried within her the weight of a world slipping away, who clung to the last threads of something that had already begun to unravel. "You fear the silence," he said at last, his voice deep as the groaning of old boughs in the wind. "You fear the day when no voices remain to speak the names of the things that were. You walk this path not only because you hope to find what was lost, but because you cannot bear to turn away and let it be forgotten." He paused, his great limbs shifting slightly, the leaves upon his shoulders rustling like distant waves. "But tell me, Amariel, if you find nothing, if the light is gone, if the last song has already been sung, will you still walk this, or will you turn away, knowing that the world will go on, even if it forgets?" Darrow faltered just for a moment, just long enough for her breath to catch, for her fingers to tremble against the wood of her staff, for her gaze to flicker not with doubt, but with something deeper, something raw. And then, after a long, aching silence, she lifted her eyes to him, and her voice, though quiet, was unwavering. "I will walk it still," she said, and there was no hesitation in her tone, no uncertainty, only the quiet certainty of one who had already made their choice long before the question had even been spoken. "Even if I find nothing, even if the last ember has turned to ash, even if the world has already forgotten, I will still remember. I will still seek. Because if I do not, then who will?" Galadon did not answer. He only watched her, watched the way the starlight touched the edges of her features, watched the way the wind moved through her hair, the way the trees around them seemed to lean in, listening, as if the earth itself had taken note of her words. And in the long, quiet space between them, in the hush of the forgotten woods, in the slow breath of the land that had not yet faded, he understood. The past could not be changed, but there were still those who walked its edges, still those who carried its weight, still those who refused to let the last light be swallowed by the dark. And they walked on into the waiting silence. The night did not end quickly, nor did the dawn rush to take its place. It stretched long and quiet, lingering in the deep valleys, caught in the hollow spaces between the rising hills, woven into the mist that curled through the trees, unwilling to release the world from its grasp. The stars had begun to fade, swallowed by the slow, creeping pallor of morning, yet the sky remained heavy with shadow, its vast expanse neither light nor dark, but something caught between, something that did not yet know whether to surrender to the day or hold to the hush of night. The wind moved sluggishly now, no longer sharp and restless as it had been beneath the watchful stars, but slow, weighted, dragging through the branches of the ancient trees as though reluctant to stir them fully awake. The land itself seemed caught in a moment of waiting, as if it too held its breath beneath the half-light of morning. Galadon moved with the unhurried grace of old things, his steps slow, measured, each footfall pressing into the damp soil with the weight of years beyond counting. He could feel the ground beneath him, could sense the shifting of roots beneath the surface, the quiet pulse of life buried deep, the slow stretch of unseen things that had not yet risen from their sleep. There was something familiar in the air now, something that had begun to stir within him the moment they had crossed into the deeper woods, though he could not yet name it, could not yet shape the thought into certainty. It was not the voice of the trees, no. The trees here were quiet, their whispers mere murmurs at the edge of his senses, neither calling to him nor turning him away. He was something older than them, something that lay beyond even their deep, slumbering memory, and it unsettled him, not with fear, but with the strange, unfamiliar feeling of being near something that should not exist. Something that had no place in the world as it was now, and yet still remained. Amariel walked beside him, her steps lighter but no less steady, her dark eyes set forward, though not without the flicker of unease, not without the quiet tension that had begun to settle in her shoulders, as if she too had begun to feel the presence that stirred beneath the hush of morning. She did not speak, not yet, but he could see the thoughts moving behind her gaze, the way her lips pressed together in the faintest trace of hesitation, the way her fingers had tightened around the staff she carried. She had followed the voice of the wind, had listened to the whispers of rivers and the shifting of stones, had spent years chasing something she had never seen, never touched, never known for certain to be real. But now, as they walked deeper into the quiet places of the world, she was no longer following whispers. She was walking into the presence of something real. At last she drew a slow breath, her voice low, quiet, but no less weighted for its softness. "There is something here," she murmured, not in question, not in doubt, but in the certainty of one who had spent too long searching to mistake the feeling now curling in the marrow of her bones. "Something old, something forgotten, but not lost. Do you feel it?" Galadon did not answer immediately, though his great limbs shifted slightly, his golden eyes narrowing as he turned his gaze toward the thickening trees, toward the mist that clung to the spaces between them thick as breath, curling through the boughs like unseen hands weaving the edges of the world together. "I feel it," he rumbled at last, his voice low, the slow groaning of ancient wood shifting in the wind. "It does not call to me as the trees of Fangorn do, nor does it push me away. It only waits." Amariel exhaled softly, though whether in relief or quiet unease, even she did not know. "It has been waiting a long time," she said, her fingers tightening against the wood of her staff, as though to remind herself that she was still here, still moving, still flesh and blood in a world where such things could be lost too easily. "I do not know if we were meant to find it, or if it has only remained because no one has dared to search for it before. But it is here." Galadon was silent for a long moment, the slow shifting of his great frame the only answer he gave at first, the deep breath of the earth stirring beneath his feet as though it too was waking from a long, long sleep. And then at last he spoke, his voice heavy with thought, with the weight of time pressing down upon each word. "Not all things that wait do so to be found," he said, the golden gleam of his eyes darkening slightly as he turned them toward her, toward the quiet tension in her shoulders, toward the flicker of something unreadable in her gaze. "Some things remain because they were never meant to be touched again." Amariel stilled, the breath catching in her throat, though she did not look away, did not falter beneath the weight of his words. "Perhaps," she admitted, her voice quieter now, though no less certain. "But I have spent too many years following shadows, too many years chasing the echoes of things already gone. I will not turn away now, not when I can feel it beneath my feet, not when I know that it is not yet vanished. If it still lingers, then it is not beyond reach. Not yet." Galadon studied her for a long, slow moment, the ancient grooves of his bark catching the dim light of the waking sky, the slow shifting of his great limbs a quiet testament to the thoughts moving within him. He had spent his years in the stillness of old things, had watched as the world moved around him, had listened to the voices of the forests fade one by one, until only the memory of them remained. He had never sought to change what was, He had never sought to grasp at things that had already slipped beyond the reach of time. But this was different. He could not yet name why, could not yet shape the thought into something solid, something certain. But he felt it, as surely as he had felt the song that had called to him from the wind, as surely as he had felt the roots of the world beneath him, waiting. And so, after a moment, he nodded. The mist thickened as they moved deeper, curling around their limbs, winding through the boughs of the trees, pressing against them like the hush of breath caught between words. The trees grew taller here, their trunks dark, thick, their branches heavy with leaves that seemed to drink the dim light of morning, casting long shadows that stretched in twisting shapes across the ground. The earth beneath their feet was damp, rich, the scent of deep roots and old stone filling the air, mingling with something else, something faint, something lingering just beyond the senses, not yet seen, not yet touched, but there. And as they walked, as the hush of the waiting woods pressed in around them, Amariel felt it. For the first time in all her long years of searching, not a whisper, not an echo, not the distant trace of something lost, but the presence of something real, something that had not yet faded, something that had been waiting. The mist had thickened into something more than air, something almost tangible, wrapping itself around the trunks of the towering trees like an old embrace, curling in slow, lazy tendrils along the damp forest floor. It clung to the branches, thick as breath, shifting in the dim hush of morning, swallowing sound, muffling the world into something half-formed, half-forgotten. The trees, tall and vast as sentinels of a long-buried age, loomed in silence, their trunks blackened with the passage of countless years, their limbs stretching toward the sky in gnarled shapes, as if reaching for something they had long lost the strength to touch. Their roots coiled beneath the surface, winding through the earth like veins, gripping deep, holding on to something unseen, something that did not wish to be moved. The air was heavy here, thick with the scent of damp soil and old leaves, with the ghost of something sweeter beneath it, a faint trace of something long past, something that did not belong to the world as it was now, but to the world as it had once been. Amariel felt the weight of it settling in her chest, felt the hush of the unseen pressing against her skin, against the quiet places in her mind where thought had not yet formed. She had walked long roads, had wandered through ruins swallowed by ivy, had traced her fingers over carvings too worn to read, had followed rivers that whispered of things that no longer had voices to tell their own stories. But this was different. This was not ruin. This was not something broken and left behind. This was something that had remained, something that had waited. And now, as she stepped deeper into the hush of the unseen, she felt for the first time in all her long searching that she was not walking towards something lost, but towards something that had been waiting to be found. Beside her, Galadon moved in slow, deliberate steps, his vast frame shifting with the creaking of old wood, the rustling of leaves that were not his own. He could feel the roots beneath him, could sense the slow, patient pull of things that had never stopped growing, even when the world above had moved on without them. There was something here, something that had not yet faded into silence, though it had come close. So he could feel it in the soil, in the way the air pressed against him, in the way the mist curled, not in randomness, but in patterns, as if it moved with thought, as if it had memory of its own. And that thought unsettled him, not in fear, not in dread, but in the slow, ponderous way of things that were not meant to be questioned, things that had existed before questioning had even begun. Uel's voice, when it came, was soft, though not uncertain. Her words careful, as though she were shaping something fragile in the air between them, something that might break if spoken too harshly. "There was once a time," she murmured, her fingers brushing absently against the bark of a nearby tree, her gaze distant, unfocused, "when the world did not forget, when the passing of time did not mean the fading of what had been, when memory did not slip through the cracks of the years like water through open hands. I wonder," she continued, her voice quieter now, though no less weighted, "if that time is truly gone, or if we only believe it to be so because we have allowed ourselves to forget how to hold on." Galadon turned his great head slightly, the slow groaning of wood moving against itself filling the silence between them, the golden gleam of his deep-set eyes unreadable beneath the shifting shadows. "Memory is a root," he rumbled at last, his voice low, heavy, carrying the weight of long thought. "It grows deep, unseen, silent. It holds the earth together, though none see it, though none think of it when they look upon the branches stretching toward the sky. But memory is also a river. It moves, it carries, it changes, shaping the land even as it carves through it. And rivers do not return to the mountains from which they were born. They do not flow backward, no matter how deeply we wish for it to be so." Amariel exhaled slowly, her gaze shifting toward him, searching, though she did not speak immediately. She let the hush of the unseen settle between them again, let it weave itself into the spaces of thought where words were not yet needed, where meaning could exist without shape. And then, after a long moment, she shook her head, though not in disagreement, not in defiance, but in something quieter, something sad. "Rivers do not return," she conceded, "but the sea is not the end of water. It rises again, it returns to the sky, it falls upon the earth and becomes something new." Her voice dropped lower, barely above a whisper now, though it did not waver. "Perhaps memory is the same. Perhaps it does not return to what it was, but that does not mean it vanishes. Perhaps it becomes something else, and perhaps that is enough." Galadon did not answer, not immediately. He only watched her, his great limbs shifting slightly, the leaves upon his shoulders catching in the slow, unseen currents of the mist, the weight of long years pressing into the stillness of his form. And then, after a moment, he inclined his head ever so slightly, a movement so slow it might have gone unnoticed had she not been waiting for it. "Perhaps," he rumbled at last, and though the word was simple, it was not empty. The mist stirred around them, thickening, winding through the trees like something alive, something moving, something shifting into form, into shape, though not yet fully revealed. And as they walked deeper into the hush of the unseen, Amariel felt it again, not a whisper, not an echo, not a memory slipping through the cracks of time, but something real, something waiting. The trees grew denser now, their trunks rising in great columns of darkened wood, their roots weaving together like the interlaced fingers of something vast, something unseen, something that had bound itself to the bones of the world and had never let go. The air was thick here, heavy, carrying the scent of something more than damp soil, more than old leaves, something richer, something that did not belong to decay, but to the fullness of things that had never ceased to grow. In a hush just beyond the thickest cluster of trees, there was a glow. It was not fire, it was not the sun, nor the moon, nor any light that belonged to the world they had known. It was softer, subtler, a gleam woven into the mist itself, something that pulsed like the faintest ember of a once great flame, something that breathed, not in the way of living things, but in the way of something that had never truly died. Emil stopped, her breath catching. Though she did not yet reach for it, did not yet step forward. She only stared, her hands trembling against the wood of her staff, her pulse quickening in her throat, though she could not say if it was with fear or wonder or something between the two. Galadon was still, the hush of the unseen pressing against him, through him, around him. And then, at last, in a voice deep as the roots of mountains, he spoke. "The last light," he murmured, the words scarcely more than breath. "It remains." And for the first time in all her long searching, Amal knew she had found it. The glow did not shine as the light of the sun, nor did it glimmer with the cold brilliance of the stars. It was not fire, nor moonlight, nor the flickering warmth of any lantern wrought by hand. It was something older, something softer and yet deeper, a radiance that did not break the darkness but wove through it, as roots weave through the earth, as veins of gold lie buried within stone, hidden yet undeniable. It pulsed, not with the hurried rhythm of a flame consuming itself, but with the slow and patient breath of something that had never forgotten how to endure, something that had remained long after all else had been lost to time. The mist curled around it, folding into its edges like a living thing, shifting with every faint shimmer of light, as if even the air itself did not quite know what to do with something so old, so nearly forgotten, and yet still here. The Amariel did not move, did not speak, could not yet bring herself to step forward, though her whole body trembled with the weight of the moment, with the knowledge that this was not another whisper, not another flicker of memory slipping through her fingers, not another illusion built from longing and the hunger of hope. This was real. She could feel it not only in her eyes, but in her bones, in the spaces between her ribs where breath had caught, in the trembling pulse at her wrist, in the place deep inside her mind where the wind had once only carried echoes of what might have been. It was no longer a question, no longer a doubt. The light. Galadon remained still beside her, his vast form wrapped in shadow in the hush of the forest that had grown thick and silent around them, his golden eyes gleaming faintly beneath the twisting canopy of the trees. He could feel the roots pressing deep beneath him, the ancient threads of life woven into the bones of the world, the slow and steady hum of something that had been waiting for so long. It was not the way of Ents to seek, nor to chase after what had passed. They were creatures of patience, of memory that did not move but merely was, that did not hunger but only endured. And yet, as he stood there in the presence of something that should not have been, something that should have faded long ago, he felt perhaps for the first time in all his long years a stirring in the deepest part of himself, in the place where time did not often reach, a question old and slow but undeniable. At last, Amariel drew a breath, unsteady, almost reverent, as if she feared that even the air might disturb the fragile quiet that had settled around them. "It is not gone," she whispered, not looking at Galadon, not looking at anything but the soft, pulsing glow before her. "All this time, all these years, all the roads I have walked, all the voices that have faded, all the ruins where nothing but silence remained. I had begun to wonder if I was chasing only ghosts, if I was searching for something that had never truly been. But this, her voice trembled, not with doubt, not even with fear, but with the overwhelming enormity of what lay before her. This is real. Galadon shifted slightly, the slow creaking of his limbs like the groan of old boughs in the wind, though his great eyes remained fixed upon the light, his thoughts turning with the measured patience of roots stretching into the unseen depths of the earth. "Real," he murmured, and there was something unreadable in his tone, something deep and layered, as though even he, in all his slowness, in all his vast and endless patience, was struggling to shape the thought into words. Yes, but not unchanged. Amariel turned toward him then, her dark gaze searching his, the flickering glow reflecting in the depths of her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer, already felt the truth of it winding through her mind like the slow unfurling of ivy along an ancient wall. Ganon's great limbs shifted again, the wind moving through the leaves upon his shoulders, his gaze heavy, weighted with something that was neither sorrow nor warning, but something close to both. "The light of the trees was once vast," he said at last, his voice low, thoughtful, the words shaped with the care of one who did not waste speech. "It was not merely something that shone, it was something that was. It filled the world as breath fills the chest, as water fills the sea, as time fills the sky. It did not belong to one place, nor to one moment, nor to one. It was endless." He let the hush settle between them before continuing, slower now, the weight of time pressing into every syllable. "But this is not the light as it was." His golden eyes narrowed, though not in doubt nor in dismissal, but in something deeper, something older. "It is the last ember of something that was once. It has not been lost, but neither has it remained unchanged." Amariel swallowed, her fingers tightening slightly around the wood of her staff, the breath in her chest shallow, as though she had not yet remembered how to release it. "And does that make it less?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady, though she was not sure if she was speaking to him or to herself. Ganon did not answer immediately. He only watched, only listened, only let the silence turn the question over in the deep places of his mind. And then, after a long, slow breath, he said, "No, but it does make it something else." Amariel closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly, letting the weight of his words settle into the spaces of her thoughts, letting them wind through the uncertainty that had begun to take shape in the edges of her mind. And yet, as she turned her gaze back toward the light, as she let its quiet glow press against the darkness, against the hush of the waiting world, she felt no sorrow, no doubt, no fear. "Then perhaps," she murmured, "what matters is not whether it is what it once was, but what it still is." Maiden tilted his head slightly, the slow rustling of leaves the only sound that followed. And then, at last, he inclined his great head in the smallest of nods. Amariel turned toward the light, and this time she did not hesitate. She stepped forward, past the edge of the mist, past the hush of waiting things, past the threshold of doubt and certainty, into the glow that pulsed softly, not with the fire of something that burned, but with the quiet breath of something that still lived. It was not the light of the trees as it had been in Valinor. It was not the radiance that had once bathed the world in gold and silver. that had filled the air with the endless song of the Valar's first days. But it was something. It was still here. It had not been lost. And as she knelt before it, as she let her fingers brush the air around it, as she felt the warmth of it press against her skin like the first breath of spring after a long winter, she understood. Some things did not return to what they once were. Some things did not remain unchanged. But that did not mean they were gone. That did not mean they had no place in the world that remained. And as the hush of the unseen shifted around her, as the mist curled through the waiting trees, as the last light pulsed quietly in the heart of the forgotten woods, she knew without doubt, without fear, without hesitation, that she had not come here to find the past. She had come here to find what came next. Amariel knelt in the hush of the waiting forest, her breath slow, deliberate, her fingers hovering just above the glow that pulsed before her. It was not fire, nor sunlight, nor the silver radiance of the moon, but something else, something deeper, something that did not demand attention, did not push back the darkness, did not burn, but simply was. It was a quiet light, a steady light, one that had not been stolen nor consumed, but had instead endured, hidden, forgotten by the world that had once been shaped by its brilliance. And yet, even in its quietness, she felt the enormity of it pressing against her senses, not as weight, not as power, but as presence, something that had never left, though all else had faded. She exhaled slowly, feeling the cool dampness of the earth beneath her, feeling the hush of the unseen pressing against her skin, feeling the slow, rhythmic pulse of the light that should not have remained, that should not have been. She had walked so many roads, had traced so many lost names through the dust of forgotten halls, had whispered so many unanswered questions into the wind, and yet she had never expected to find this, to find something that was not a remnant, not a ruin, not a fading echo of a time long past, but something living, something that had endured. Galadon stood behind her, his towering form wrapped in shadow, his golden eyes half-lidded, unreadable, the hush of the ancient woods folding around him like a second skin. He did not move, did not speak, did not press himself forward as many others might have done. He only watched, only listened, only let the slow shifting of the world beneath him tell him what needed to be known. The light had not been lost, no, it had only been hidden. And for the first time in many, many years, he felt something shift deep within the marrow of his being, something slow and vast, something like the slow, unfurling stretch of a root pressing through stone, something like the weight of rain pressing into dry earth after a long, long drought. The trees of Valinor were gone, and their light had been scattered, stolen, shattered beyond reckoning. But here was something that had not faded, that had not been unmade, that had not been swallowed by the dark. And that meant something. Amel's voice, when it came, was quiet but steady, shaped by wonder and certainty in equal measure. "It is not faded," she whispered, her fingertips brushing the edges of the light, though she did not try to take it, did not try to claim it as something that could belong to her, as something that could belong to anyone at all. "It has remained, waiting, unseen, but never gone." Galadon let out a slow breath, a deep rumbling sound like the shifting of mountains beneath the weight of years. "Some things do not fade," he said, his voice low, contemplative, his great limbs creaking as he shifted, the quiet weight of ages pressing into every syllable. "Some things remain, even when all else is lost, not because they are untouched by time, but because they know how to endure. Amariel turned her gaze to him then, her dark eyes reflecting the glow, though she did not speak immediately. She only watched, only listened, only let the silence stretch between them like the space between roots, filled not with absence, but with the slow and steady hum of understanding. At last, after a long, thoughtful pause, she spoke again, her voice softer now, more certain, though no less reverent. "Then it was never meant to be found," she murmured, her breath catching slightly as she shaped the thought into words. "Not by kings, not by warriors, not by those who sought to wield it as a weapon or keep it as a treasure. It was meant to remain, to endure, not in splendor, not in dominion, but simply as itself." She let her hand fall away, her fingers curling slightly against her palm. "And now that I have found it, I see that I was never meant to take it, never meant to carry it away, to return it to those who believe they remember what once was. It was never theirs to reclaim. It was never ours to claim at all." Galadon nodded slowly, the great weight of his thoughts settling deep into the marrow of the earth beneath him, pressing into the slow and patient hum of life that had never ceased to grow, even when the world had forgotten to listen. "Not all things that are lost must be restored," he rumbled, his voice low, measured, vast as the stretching boughs above them. "Some things are meant to remain unseen, not because they are unworthy of remembrance, but because they are beyond it." He turned his great head toward her, his golden eyes heavy with thought. "The light of the trees was never meant to be owned. It was never meant to be held by hands that would use it as proof of what was, or wield it as power over what is. If it has remained, then it has remained for itself, not for those who seek to shape it into something else." Amariel felt the truth of his words press into her chest, pressing into the quiet spaces where longing had once sat, where sorrow had once settled like a weight too heavy to lift. And yet now that weight was gone. The ache of what had been lost had been replaced by something else, something quieter but no less powerful. Acceptance. She had spent so many years searching, chasing, grasping at the edges of a world that had slipped beyond reach, believing that if she could only find something, anything that had remained, then the past would not feel so distant, then the things she had lost would not feel so wholly gone. But now, standing here before the last light of something that had endured, not because it had been preserved, but because it had chosen to remain, she understood. The past could not be reclaimed, but that did not mean it had vanished. She let out a slow breath, her shoulders easing, the tightness in her chest unwinding, the ache of years spent chasing something she had never truly needed to find, fading into something else, into understanding, into peace. She did not need to carry the light with her. She only needed to know that it was there. She turned to Galadon then, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. The weariness in her gaze is no longer one of sorrow, but of quiet relief. "We leave it," she said, the words no longer a question, no longer uncertain. "We leave it as it is, as it was always meant to be." Galadon watched her for a long moment, the hush of the unseen pressing around them, the slow shifting of roots beneath them, the quiet, steady pulse of the light glowing softly between the trees. And then, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice low, slow, full of something vast and knowing. "We leave it." And so, beneath the hush of the waiting woods, beneath the silver veil of mist curling through the unseen spaces between root and stone, beneath the last lingering breath of a dawn that had not yet fully come, they turned away, and the light, undisturbed, unseen,